Okay, then Dmitry Buzdin on the stage. Let's welcome.
Hi everyone, glad to be back on stage after these 2 years. After 2 COVIDs, I need to train my lungs. It's good to have so many people, and let's make it interactive, because I could speak for 1 hour without feedback on any Zoom, but here you can interrupt and ask questions. Don't worry, you will not disappoint me. So the topic is why is it so complex to accept a payment? So this is a statement I hear from consumers and some even IT people who are experiencing payments, and they cannot understand the stupidity. Why it doesn't work? Why is it so slow? Why it's so expensive? And when it will be done? So when can we pay in a normal way? Why can these developers cannot do it? And probably the closest suspicion is that payments are done by enterprise developers who use only Oracle forms, and that's why it doesn't work. But let's take a deeper look. And okay, so a quick introduction. So I'm Dmitry Buzdin. I have few jobs. So one job is paused for now. It's Riga DevDays conference. So we'll see if we'll get back soon. Second job is AHEADS Consulting. So we do some fintech payments, banking, development and DevOps. If you have some projects, call me. And the third job, it's only 1 year. I always dreamt to work in a startup, and I now have an opportunity to work in a project called MiaPay. I will demo it actually today as well. And it's a big fun, and it's about payments as well. Right. So why are we discussing this? So during COVID, we've all seen a very rapid growth in payment startups and investment in fintech and payments. So this is a slide from some financial magazine showing an exponential growth of investment into payment companies when COVID started. So we are somewhere here right now, and here we have Klarna firing 700 people. I think it was announced yesterday. So maybe it will go down a little bit, but still, it's a good trajectory. It wasn't a joke about Klarna. and so you have all these hundreds of companies. You have like some companies with, I don't know, 1,000 developers doing only payments. And what are all these people doing is, if what you need to do is to take money, transfer it, and put it into someone else's account. How complex could it be, right? And now a question: who worked in payment projects, integrating payments or something? Okay, like 15 people maybe. It's good because everyone else would learn a lot. So first, so what is a payment? What is a payment? Basically, it's how you transfer value from one individual or company to another individual or company for exchange of goods or services or something else in a safe and efficient way. So that's a payment. We use a lot of terminology, and it's kind of repeats the topic of previous presenters, that domain-driven design and terminology is important, and it's better to use the correct one. So everyone knows payments in cash. There is a very big push, so it will disappear over time. There are many motivations why payment in cash should disappear. I like cash, it's great, but it's not good for economy, it's not good for some other processes in the world. Anyway, let's not talk about cash. So overall, in payment landscape, you could divide into 3 camps, let's say. One is a more traditional camp, payment cards, which took over the world lots of years ago. Second is like a challenger, is called account-to-account payments. I will talk about it, what is this. And the third one is crypto. I deleted those slides about crypto. Actually, I will not talk about it because it's too controversial, and yeah, I decided that I will not do it because I only did the half of the project in crypto, but I did quite a few in other circles. So let's try to compare payment cards and account-to-account payments using this criteria. So try to evaluate speed, cost efficiency, and trust in this payment method and see what comes out. Yeah, so let's start with payment cards. So you see the famous brands. There are more brands. There are some regional brands like Union Pay, for example. And so what is a payment card? So typically it's some plastic with a chip, with a stripe maybe, and it's driven by several international standard organizations. So all cards from all vendors should be implemented in according to international standards, which are published and available to everyone. And these important organizations would be EMV and Co. And EMV stands for MasterCard, Visa, and something else. But basically, it defines how chip communicates over radiomagnetic signals. So PCI was mentioned by Yuri. It's about security of stuff, of your data, of your transactions. And ISO defines some key protocols used in payment cards. So basically, if you are in a payment space, you have to be ready to read a lot. So it's not about understanding domain and drawing five boxes with arrows, but really to dig into some specifications, because a lot of specifications leave space for variation and different implementation differ, and you have to understand quite on a deep level these commands and data attributes and so on. So actually there's a concept of virtual cards, also sometimes called cloud payments. So you have Google Pay, Apple Pay, but also many others like Samsung, Garmin, Fitbit, and for example Mercedes Pay. So virtual cards are taking more and more traction, and it's not uncommon that you don't even have a plastic card, you only have a virtual card, and you could actually do some nice tricks with virtual cards, which is like next generation of payment applications, that you could send to someone a virtual card as a gift, or you could issue a virtual card as a loyalty card, and tricks like that. So cards are becoming a commodity, and you could even issue one card per transaction using API and cloud and without any physical manufacturing. So a virtual card will become like a token for a payment which you could send to someone in a Telegram or WhatsApp message. So that's where it's going. So if we talk about speed, I don't see any problems with speed with card anymore. And like 10 years ago, you should wait a little bit, like 5 to 10 or more seconds, and sometimes it fails. But since we have a very stable internet connection, speed is not an issue. So you tap, and in a few seconds, it's done. So all good. So let's take a look at cost structure. So who is actually paying for cards? So you never maybe thought about this. So you go to a shop, you have something like an apple which costs €1, and you can pay it by cash, or you can pay it by card, and it's still €1. Strange, but actually merchants are not allowed to put a markup on top of an apple if you pay with card. So they have forced to offer you the same price. And actually a trick I used sometimes is that you say I'll pay by cash, but you give me a discount, otherwise I pay by card. And it's fair. it always works. But the money is somewhere else, and there's so-called a four-party model where you as a customer, you buy stuff from merchant. Merchant has a contract with acquirer. It could be a bank or some payment institution, and issuer is a company which gives you a card. And there are these payments happening, like a merchant has to pay probably around 1%, 1.5% to acquirer. You have to pay a monthly fee to issuer and acquirer must pay licensing fees to Visa, MasterCard, and acquirer and issuer interchange fees as well. So pricing in card world is kind of funny because if you as a merchant are given like a 1.2%, for example, it's a very approximate number because the price of transactions changes due to such factors as a card country, as a card type, if it's credit or debit, if it's a company card or private card, and if I'm not mistaken, time of the day is also influencing the pricing of a transaction. So acquirers and issuers have to kind of predict what's their average statistics and give a flat fee or some simplified fee structure to their customers. So that's kind of interesting problem. And so overall it's very complex and very competitive. So there are quite a lot of acquirers in the world, and there are a lot of regional acquirers in different business sectors, and they compete for 0.9% between themselves to get a merchant, and typically so the price is not even the most crucial factor. So people are looking more for like a trust or quality of service, and they are even ready to pay a little bit more. Right. So speaking about trust and customer protection, so actually in Europe when you pay with a card, so it's you kind of, it's not your problem if money gets stolen. So of course, so there are these insurance programs for a credit card. So you buy something, you break it, and they pay back your money or replace. So okay, that's insurance. But also, if your credentials are stolen and your money is stolen, in theory, if you haven't shared the PIN code or CVC with anyone, it's not your issue. Okay, it's someone else's issue, and the acquirer and issuer would be deciding who has to take these losses. And also, in cards, there's a very formal process of filing a complaint. So if you don't like something, you could call your issuer and complain about certain purchase, and they have to open a chargeback case request and investigate throughout the chain from acquirer to merchant and decide whose fault is it. And there is cost associated. So the more chargeback requests acquirer or merchant have, they are charged for every such request, even if they are not guilty. And so that's also kind of a leverage which sometimes could be used or abused, that being a nasty customer, you can gain something for your benefit. But yeah, the main point is to persuade your bank to open this chargeback request. Yeah, so overall, I would say speed is superb, trust is great, because someone else takes the liability for transactions and your money. But there are some problems with cost efficiency, because everyone in this schema pays, and merchants have some hidden fees, and so it's maybe not so cost efficient, because we have to support Visa and MasterCard organizations, and they are pretty huge. Then let's speak about account-to-account payments. So this image was stolen from Nordigen. So that's an IBAN structure, a typical IBAN structure. So maybe you don't know that this is actually a checksum. And this is a bank identifier, this is country code. So basically, account to account is what it means. So I pay from my bank account to someone else's bank account. Is it a novelty? No. So I could do that for many years. But there are some interesting developments in the last years. So first of all, you have to know about SEPA. So we are in Europe, so that's dominating technology of how to do cross-bank transfers. So when you say I made a bank transfer for payment specialist, it translates to I made a SEPA transfer. So SEPA stands for a single euro payments area, and in a nutshell it works that an originator bank where my account and my money is sends a message with payment to a intermediary clearing system. There are only few clearing systems in Europe. One is in Lithuania actually, and then the beneficiary bank gets this message back. And what's interesting is that your money is not moved immediately. So basically, originator bank writes off amount from your account, and beneficiary bank adds money to the person whom you sent money, but the actual money transfer between banks does not happen at the same time. So both banks have big pockets of money standing in a central bank, and they assume that they have enough money to cover these transfers back and forth, to use it as a pool of money. And only, let's say at the end of the day, you have one big transfer to compensate the daily differences. So that adds a bit of complexity. There are people who monitor these pools of money, so they are not depleted, and that you don't keep too much funds in this pool, so you use your money wisely. So some more complexity, and so that's how your money looks like when it's traveling in the network. So it's SEPA works based on good old XML backed up with XSD documents, XSD schemas, and overall it's called ISO 20022 format, which defines this XML structure. There are different types of messages. That's one of them, and you could see that the designers of this XML schema were so good developers that they saved a lot of network traffic, but by shortening all the XML tags. Like for example, other is OTHR, so they saved one letter. So maybe it was a good idea back then, but its format still looks the same. So an upgrade came quite well, maybe, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago. I don't remember, to be honest. It's a SEPA instant. So previously you would accumulate a batch of XML files and upload them to FTP once in a few hours, and that would be your transfer. And that's why you would be complaining, oh, by card, if I pay by card, it goes instantly, but if I pay by internet bank, I have to wait 4 hours or maybe even next day. Okay, we have solution for that. Let's send XML files over TCP socket, and that's called SEPA instant. So you have the same messages, but you just send them immediately. And there are like legal requirements that the system has to be up. There has to be 10 seconds for the transaction max, with a limit of 100,000 euro per transaction. So it's kind of there already, but it's not guaranteed that your transaction will be instant. So banks can do different strategies, but one example is that if you send money to someone you've never sent money to, or as the amount is big, your money will be stopped for a manual AML check, for example, and that destroys kind of the idea of instant payments. So this is a very simplified workflow of how one transaction is being processed in a bank. So in reality, there will be like 4 or 5 times more states where you have to communicate with external anti-fraud systems, external data sources, and core banking systems. But you can get the concept, and this AML checks, it kind of destroys the idea of you being able to send money to anyone in the world instantly. So it's not about technology, it's about regulations, and it's about what fintechs and banks have to do. And okay, so SEPA is like Rails, sending XML via TCP or to putting them on FTP drive. But so how do you initiate your SEPA payment? So you could do it from a mobile app, from an internet bank, and there's something called open banking or PISP, payment initiating service provider. So what's that? So open banking was so how many years ago? 5 years ago probably. But it's now generally available and implemented because banks have to do it. And so that's an important topic about cost of transaction. So if you're doing intra-bank transactions, so Swedbank to Swedbank, for example, it's typically free, so it's zero. But if it's from bank to bank, it's some fixed fee, regardless of transaction amount. And because if it's an intra-bank, so bank doesn't have to use any settlement system like SEPA, they do it internally in their accounting system. But interbank, they have to rely on third party, and third party charges like 6 cents per transaction, and bank charges you like 36 cents all fair. So why open banking was revolutionary? Not because of technology, but because it says that if you transfer money with open banking, bank cannot diversify the payment strategy. If you do it from an internet bank and it costs you 36 cents, then if you do it from open banking, the same transaction would also cost you 36 cents. So they are not allowed to have different pricing levels. And suddenly, a very cool idea became possible that I could have a merchant account. I have a big shop, and if I open accounts in every major bank, then all customers from these banks would send the money to me for free, because it's intra-bank kind of transfer. So if you come and if you want to pay me from Swedbank, I have account in Swedbank, it's zero. If in Luminor, it's zero because I have account in Luminor. But it's not so simple, because open banking came with some standards. The European one recommended one is called the Berlin Group. It's no longer XML, it's a REST API with a JSON. And every bank is recommended to use this Berlin Group API. If they don't want to use it, they have to prove that their implementation is good enough, and some banks are actually not following Berlin Group in order to make it very complex and costly for integrators to integrate to their API, but they have to provide this anyway. And the problem is that this API didn't define some crucial parts, so they could do authentication in any way they like. Okay, there are some variations, and there are some optional APIs which you are free not to implement. There are some optional fields which you could name differently, and that created a market for so-called open banking API aggregators. Like our famous one is Nordigen, but Nordigen is doing only account information services, but here we're talking about payment services, so it's a separate branch. But basically what they have to do, and every API integrator, is investigate every bank, signs an agreement with them, get documentation, understands that 80% of API is the same, but 20% is unique and aligned to these changes, and then prays that you will get all the updates about breaking changes in their API. So yeah, it's interesting. There are some discussions of changes in these standards and what to do next, but no concrete actions yet. So there is now a market for aggregators which would charge merchants for the service of translating bank open API to one API, because those are not defined properly. So speaking about trust, I've never did it, and I've never heard someone done it in real life, but actually there's a concept of SEPA reversal, and in theory, if you get scammed, your bank has tools to request this money back. it's in protocol, so we've implemented that in the project. But for some reasons, banks are saying, so if you get scammed, we cannot get this money back. But they can. I don't know what's the commercial or other reason, but they don't do it. Maybe just they don't want to bother. But basically, a bank can send a request to return money to another bank, and unless this money already gone to some other countries or jurisdictions, you can get it back. But you have to call bank and be very angry. So overall, I would rate the speed a bit less than cards. The cost efficiency is very good. It's much better than cards because you could build a solution with. You could actually build a regional Latvian solution where transactions cost you 0 to all major banks, and it's quite easy to do. And trust is less because no one cares. In payment organizations, there are special people who handle chargeback and dispute situations. In banks, they're instructed to tell you, we don't do this, sorry. And yeah, so there's less trust. So what else can we speak? So user experience. So actually, I've never thought about it, but payments have user experience as well. So what is that? For famous example is Amazon One Click, which appeared, I don't know, quite some time ago, but now people are trying to copy it in Europe. Thing is, with the US, there are less regulation around cards, and like one click in US, you could just do it. In Europe, you have to study a lot of laws and talk to your financial regulator quite a lot. But basically, yes, so we're moving into a direction where if you've already used some payment technologies, they've saved your card or account, and next time you come there, it's much easier. So you don't have to enter your card number again or do something like this. So it's going to this direction of one-click payments. So QR codes are quite fancy. We don't have much in Latvia, I guess, but in other countries it's very popular. And there are different flavors of QR codes. So you could have a QR code identifying a merchant ID, and that actually could be just a sticker. So you stick it in my restaurant, and when waiters come, I make a photo of a sticker, I enter amount, and I send you money, and the waiter just says, oh, okay, thank you, you've paid, that's fine. So it's like an identifier of account of a merchant. So there's a QR code as customer ID, where I present my QR code and merchant scans with a scanner, and backend system requests a payment account. I open Smart ID, I approve, money goes out. And there's a QR code as payment request where a consumer scans a unique merchant QR code, and his bank initiates a payment request, and then you kind of sign it. So QR code is just a mean of identification, and there are different workflows possible actually. And some startups are doing that. One interesting thing is that so now we have contactless. So I think in 2 years, MasterCard says their cards will not have a magnetic stripes anymore. So it's gone, like no more magnetic stripes. So next one is entering a chip into a card reader. So it's still used in many places, but we are in process of migrating to contactless. And why is it important? Because phones do not have any chip to insert, but phones have NFC, and the card is actually talking the same NFC. So your phone is not worse than any contactless cards. It talks the same language, and so you can imagine some possibilities. And there's due to this fact, there is kind of also ongoing evolution of POS terminals. That previously POS terminal would look something like this. So that's a classical one. Next you have portable, which are less expensive and they do not print a receipt. And next one was a mobile app with something connected via via Bluetooth, which is there only to talk to chip. But the last generation of POS terminals would be just an app which uses your smartphone NFC chip to talk to a credit card directly and to withdraw money. So that became possible only last year, and next year this thing will be standardized and available on market quite heavily. So and from my knowledge, most of the payment players are moving into that direction. So I can show a small demo if it works. So that's actually what this startup is about. So we are building an app which accepts payment cards when you install it on any phone. And let's hope that it will work. So basically, I press, I have a amount entry, press here, I wait, and it's a testing environment, and so basically I do this, and it's MasterCard transaction done. So that's what you will see in shops from next year, all around the world. Not from us, there are like 20 vendors in the world, but maybe something from us as well. And the last news, it was actually out last week. So MasterCard is starting to roll out biometric checkout in America as well, where you don't have to have anything, it's just your biometrics from government database. Because you might not think about it, but in the EU we have all the GDPR protections and so. But if you talk about Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia, there are biometric databases, government biometric databases, and you could make an API query asking, is this that person who we assume it is, and get an answer, yes or no. And so something like this will be possible soon as well in Europe when we discard the GDPR. So yeah, and so UX is just the top of the iceberg. So I've talked about two main directions how payments are evolving: account-to-account transfers and payment cards, and different UX options how you interact with the payment. But guess what? It's possible to combine payment cards with account-to-account payments. So how is it done? So actually, every card has a chip. Chip is a small computer, it's programmable. So chip talks to a POS terminal via this EMV protocol, and when you tap your card to an EMV protocol, there's a conversation like, hello, what type of card are you? And it could answer, you know what, I'm a MasterCard, but I'm also an account-to-account card. Okay, but what's your ID? It's this ID. And then POS terminal takes it, goes to your bank where you have an account, exchanges this ID to your IBAN, initiates payment transfer, and you get a smart ID on your phone just to confirm. Just an example. Yes, and card of course could be replaced by a phone, so you can just tap it and make a transfer from account to account. So what's the difference between cards and account to account? Well, the difference is that account to account resides in a region, in Europe or in Baltics, and when you use payment cards, you always involve some third-party corporation from the States. So I guess that's the main difference, is redistribution of fees and redistribution of sales. Yeah, but overall it feels the same, I guess. Yeah, and so you have all these building blocks, you have different types of user experiences, you have components and protocols and payment rails. We haven't even spoken about regional solutions, like if you go to Spain, there's a special payment network which is only for Spanish banks, and you could pay from one to another in this network, and there are other regional networks. So lots of fragmented and regional solutions. And so that's basically what all these people are doing in fintech and payments. They're combining these variations of user experience and payment rails and trying to do different sorts of QR code, and of course put lending on top. Putting lending on top is like cherry on the pie, so it's payment company dream. So that's it. Time for questions. Yes.
For the next year, we have the possibility to pay for this application. What's the limitation?
So the pilot programs from MasterCard and Visa only started last year, basically, and right now, so it takes time for vendors to develop software, to certify it, and then to sell it to some customers so they integrate. It takes like a year at least. And so a lot of projects are now in progress, in implementation, and they're not just ready. And those which are ready, they have only basic functionality. So they offer you this like a tap to pay experience, but they don't have some crucial features for merchants. And even if you have it, you'll say, no, it's not for me because I need to export to my accounting system or something. But over time, they will get traction, and people will learn how to sell them to merchants, so how to motivate to switch. Actually, one of the motivators is that there are not enough chips for POS terminals, and yeah, but everyone has a phone. There was a question.
Yes, I have a question. What is your personal opinion about the usage of the biometric methods of payment? Because although they would make our lives easier, some people might argue that they would lead to a personal method of payment.
Yes.
So basically, my curiosity is, do you think that would benefit or
Yeah.
outweigh the risk?
Yeah, of course. So the API basically looks like this. You take a photo of random person, you calculate biometry, you send it together with some personal data, and you get an answer, yes or no. So you will not be able to determine who that person is. But it's not a secret that even in Latvia we have cameras which track and check facial biometry to know who it is. So it's done by state agencies, basically. So it's already happening, and it's kind of unstoppable, probably. And it's just important to make sure that it's used in the right way. Yeah, but
Is it supposed to be used both for authentication and authorization of payment?
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know, to be honest. I mean, they showcase it like you step out without. But again, like in Europe, you have these strict rules about two-factor authorizations and PSD2. In the US or other parts of the world, you don't. Like, what we've been discussing with one customer recently from Latin America, and they say, oh, we cannot support PIN. But it's okay. You know, just if you make $1,000 transaction, you do it without PIN. It's not an issue in our country. That's it. So there are no these protection regulations, and of course, in a way, European regulations help to feel more safe and so on. But also, in a way, it stops innovation. So it's a balance. Well, yeah, it's not good or bad. Any more questions? Yes, please.
Yeah, I have a question. How payments work in the air?
How payments work?
In the payments
In
work
the air?
Yeah.
Oh,
they
okay.
Can,
One more trick. So you get yourself a Revolut card. So you go to air, you pay with Revolut, and when you land, you have to disable payments on the card. you will eat for free. Yeah. Yes. Because there is no balance on your card. There could be a balance, but it's like a cache of your balance. It's not real balance. And you could pay. They would accumulate a bunch of transactions, and when they land, they send it. However, modern planes have internet. Okay, so you have to figure out if it's a modern plane or some old plane.
You're still gonna pay. It's not going that way. You're still gonna pay. Even a debit card can go check it overdraft. So by the end of the day, you will owe those money.
No, not really. But most of the banks don't have it. But what was exciting about Revolut, So when this airline asked for this money, Revolut popped up a small notification that they want to withdraw your money. Do you want to allow it or no? So you press no. But that's Revolut feature. Not all banks support this. It's like a customer protection because
When you pay on the airline, you don't pay like an online where Revolut actually asks you for information on the transaction, which is paid like a card.
Yes.
So if you confirm that, right, and if it goes within the limits of contactless payments, either you pay with your phone, you confirm it with your biometric, then it's a legal transaction. So at the end of the day, Revolut will actually debit your account and withdraw the money.
no, unless you
Because
unless you forbid.
that's an actual soft fraud. We're already offering to do.
Yes.
You will be shocked, but it's not like you're gonna get away with this. You're gonna pay it.
Maybe. I don't know.
There's no.
That's why some airline companies are not accepting the whole card anymore.
Yes. Because of me. So, yeah, I'm a nasty person. Anyone else? No? Edgar?
Yes.
Yeah.
They're building their own software.
Yeah. So they kind of hint it will be available, but I guess only after their soft POS will get traction. So it maybe after 2 years or so. And also this EU this lawsuit against Apple, which is in progress, and there's some updates. But what we feel that it will be available, but in 2-3 years not early.
Will MapPay also provide gateway payment to their software?
Yes, it's planned. Yes, with
Yeah,
some.
we didn't get the demo, that was
I wanted to. I paid on my phone. It was.
So it's like what Kevin already provided.
Yes, basically, but if you want to do it quickly, you would have to integrate Kevin or someone else. Yeah, because like I said, integrate all Baltics banks, it's okay, but integrate all Europe's banks, it's not possible. It's not possible.
Yeah.